Hi, this is Brian Zinchuk of Pipeline Online.ca, Saskatchewan's Energy News. And I figured I'm going to do something here a little bit different. I'm going to do a fireside chat. I'm here at the cabin, and I'm going to record this here sitting beside the fire. And it's very important to the discussion I want to have here today, because I want to talk about the coal injunction that the 5 different parties and a Saskatoon lawyer want to do with regards to shutting down the coal-fired power generation fleet. Now, on here, I can see any comments that you make. So if you do make a comment, I can bring it up. I can interact with you. If you want to talk about this, this is a discussion chance. If you have any thoughts on the coal thing here, how it's going to affect you. So first of all, what's going on here? Back in January, for the first time in 10 years, it looked like we were going to change direction on the coal-fired power generation. So in 2014, we opened the Boundary Dam 3 integrated carbon capture and utilization project. And what that was we captured CO2 from the rebuilt Boundary Dam 3 unit, send it out a pipeline to the Weyburn unit, and use it for enhanced oil recovery. And everyone thought, well, we're going to make this work, and then from there, we are going to do this on the rest of the coal fleet, and we'll keep burning coal. Well, around 2018, SaskPower decided not to do it on units 4 and 5 at Boundary Dam, or any other units for that matter, even though Shand was being considered. And federal legislation brought in by the Conservatives and then reinforced by the Trudeau Liberals said that we have to shut down our entire coal fleet by 2030. Now that is from today, 4 years, 4 months, and about 8 days. Now, in the meantime, they also said that SaskPower asked to keep Unit 4 and 5 going for a little bit. So we signed an equivalency agreement, which would allow us to run them for a few more years. They're both shut down now. And in doing so, we had to commit to having 3,000 megawatts of wind and solar added to the Saskatchewan grid. So far in that time, we've added Assiniboia, Herbert, so that's Golden South, we call it Blue Hill, and Beckabar. Those are 200, 175, and 200 megawatts each. We're going to add another one at Golden South, and we're going to add likely another one at Weyburn, another 200 megawatts. We've also got 100 megawatts of solar. We're supposed to start construction soon near Estevan, and eventually another 100 megawatts near Cornac. But that's not enough. Now, so in the meantime, it looked like for sure we are going to lose the coal fleet. Who does that impact? About 1,100 direct jobs between power generation and the coal miners. From my house, my back door, across the fence, my neighbor drives a drag line. My neighbor who lived next to me for most of the last 17 years, 2 doors over, coal miner. Neighbor across the street, heavy maintenance for a millwright for SaskPower, recently retired. 3 doors down from him on the other side of the street, that's another SaskPower guy who just recently retired. Then, just down the street, a little bit over, we've got another gentleman who worked at the power plant for a while, and his neighbor on the other side of him, coal miner, and wife works at SaskPower. That is within 100 yards of my front door. So these are the people that are going to be impacted by this. So now, everyone figured coal was dead. Hell, I figured coal was dead. I mean, I have been, beating this drum about, maybe we should do carbon capture. Maybe we should keep doing this forever. And I'm sure Premier Mo was kind of like throwing his hands up in the air. Like, yes, Brian, okay, and nothing seemed to change. But then, in January, we had an interesting thing happen with Minister of Crown Investments Corporation, which includes SaskPower, Jeremy Harrison came down to Coronach and to Estevan in mid-January and told the workers, we're going to look very seriously into rebuilding the coal fleet. Now, there was some reluctance. Some people thought, yeah, we've heard this before, it's not likely to happen. And in the meantime, in his last 10 years, because oil took a real shit kicking, and because we were going to lose coal fleet, the city of Estevan thought they were going to lose a third of their population. That's what the mayor told me, and he's told other media as well. On top of that, the value of houses. Ken Hosey said he was IBEW, lost about $135,000 on a house during that time. These are very real impacts. So come January, the minister comes out and says, we're looking seriously at rebuilding the coal fleet. And lo and behold, he told them by Canada Day, you're going to know. And on June 18th, he sent a letter to all the IBEW workers who work for SaskPower and told them, we are going to rebuild the coal fleet. We're going to start recertifying and bringing back Unit 4 at Boundary Dam, and then 5, and eventually 6, and Poplar River and Shand. And we're going to run it for decades to come as a bridge to nuclear. Nuclear is a very important part here because for the last several years, SaskPower has been working on developing small modular reactors. Now, those small modular reactors, the announcement was made in 2022, but guaranteed the thought going into this, work going into this started long before that. So we're already 3 years into this. And when they first announced the first small modular reactor, or the idea that we were going to build 4 of them, the minister at the time, and I was there at the press conference, said, well, he was asked how much they're going to cost. And the Ontario Power Generation Minister said, $2 to $3 billion each. And Don Morgan, then SaskPower Minister, Crown Investments Corp., said, well, they could be 4 to 5. And the Ontario Minister says, we don't think there'll be that much. And Morgan said, well, they could be 4 to 5. Well, guess what? This past spring, Ontario, which approved 4 of these reactors, the cost for them is $20.9 billion. And the provincial budget for this year, approved around the same time, was $21 billion. So the cost of these 4 reactors is going to be equal to the Saskatchewan budget for 2025. And because we're actually just had a thing here, it came out on Friday, said that we're going to be over budget. That's what we're looking at. So getting back to coal here. The coal that we have, because of our socialist background, we the people own the coal. We the people own the power plants who burn the coal. We the people own the power lines and we run those electrons through. And therefore, because we own our own coal, we charge ourselves next to nothing for it. Last year, coal royalties was $25 million. It was basically a rounding error. So the coal, for all intents and purposes, as Minister Harrison said, is essentially free. Now, we do pay Westmoreland about $313 million a year to mine it, but the coal itself is free. And the natural gas that we buy from Alberta, which is about 92% of the gas we use in our gas plants. Oh, and by the way, we've built 2 large gas plants at this time, not counting one in North Battleford, and we're building a third one. That gas plant is double the cost of the last one. So the first one at Swift Current was $605 million. And the next one at Moose Jaw, which just went online in December, was $825 million, a 36% price escalation. And then the next one after that is what they call Aspen. It's at Lanigan. It's basically meant to power BHP. And that one, essentially a clone, 370 megawatts, is going to be $1.7 billion, more than double the one at Moose Jaw. So anyhow, where I'm going with all this is that the cost of building natural gas, which was cheaper 10 years ago, is cheaper no longer. The cost of natural gas itself, with LNG Canada, if you look at the futures markets, is basically expected to double. So if we have all that, we're going to be spending a lot of money on gas. And coal is pretty cheap. So maybe we should rebuild the coal fleet, is what the minister came down to, and that's what we're doing. Well, this is where we get to the coal injunction. So I've set the stage. So minister sends a letter to the people. I did the exclusive piece on that. I ran the entire letter. I've done over a dozen stories for reaction on it since then. And, some people just, their heads were exploding. So here we have a lawyer in Saskatoon, Glenn Wright, with Presidio LLP, who was a board member of Saskatchewan Environmental Society. And he was looking for the opportunity to sue the provincial government on coal. He had already 2.5 years ago initiated an action which was trying to stop the expansion of natural gas that we're already doing. So he doesn't like natural gas. Natural gas bad with this guy. Now he wants to shut down coal. More on this in a bit. So he had a number of people contact him. He contacted some people, whatever. And he actually told me they had to limit the number of people that were involved in this lawsuit. Didn't need to be too big because he didn't need 100 signatories. He just needed a few. So who did he get? Well, first of all, Saskatchewan Environmental Society, they're basically the lead on this. The Saskatchewan Environmental Society, my apologies. Which he was a board member on until this. I actually had to point out to him that his bio said he was still a director. He had to change that to bio on his webpage. So that he came off of that board very, very recently. And then the other one is Citizens for Public Justice, which is an environmental organization that's been around for a very long time. They're based in Ontario, and their biggest claim to fame in the documents they gave to the court, they claim to have killed the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline almost 50 years ago. Now, it's 5 decades ago. But that pipeline, if it had been built, just imagine the wealth that would have been generated in the north. They claim to have killed it. So that's number 2. Just 1 second. I've got a comment here. How many coal? Here, I will show that from James Decision. How many coal power plants does China have operating? How many new ones are they building? That's a great point, James. And I want to talk about that a little bit more because in all the documentation I went to, China was only mentioned once. And it was about how good they were doing for building battery systems. There's no mention in any of that documentation about how many coal plants they're building. So China's got thousands of coal units, but we are shutting down the 3 that we have, or the 3 power plants we have left. Okay, so the other participants in this coal injunction, who are they? Well, one is a 12-year-old child from Regina who's been in national headlines 3 times in the last 2 years. 3 times. Does that tell you attention seeking by chance? The first one was about a pronoun issue, a gender thing. The second one was regarding this youth was so upset about climate change that the person skipped school and ended up on at the legislature handing out flyers about climate change. Is that attention seeking at all by chance? Oh, and a National Post story was written about. It's National Post or CBC one of the 2. So then a few months later, this person's now involved in this action. The fourth party to this is a Saskatoon 50 or 55-year-old podcaster who's with the local community radio thing, and she's also with the Saskatchewan Environmental Society. And she is taking a political science degree in her 50s. So, no social activism there by chance. I don't know, is this maybe a classroom or class assignment? I don't know. And then the 5th one, this is really interesting. I'm currently sitting at our family cabin here at Sandy Lake with my nice fire here, and I'll get more to that in a second. And 100 kilometers that way is the Saskatchewan border. 400 kilometers that way is where the 5th party, Matthew Weens, who's also on the board for National Farmers Union, that's where he's from. So as far as I can determine, as far as his thing indicated for in the injunction, his affidavit, I don't think he's ever lived in Saskatchewan. He currently doesn't. He has a master's in agriculture, so he's obviously an educated person. And he isn't a SaskPower resident, or sorry, SaskPower customer. So what skin in the game does he have? Unless we have a 500-kilometer extension cord running to his farm east of Winnipeg, I don't know why he gets say in this. And, if he gets say in this, does that mean that next time Manitoba Hydro builds a dam, that maybe someone from Estevan should be filing a lawsuit about the damage done by the dam? So those are the people that are taking part in this. Oh, and I'll get back to the youth for a second here. Our society has recognized that there are certain levels at which you have agency and accountability. Under the age of 12, you cannot be charged for crime. You kill someone, you can't be charged for crime. 12 is a dividing line for the Youth Criminal Justice Act. And then you get some responsibility, but still you might get a 3-year sentence as opposed to a life sentence if you killed someone. We don't allow 12-year-olds to drive. You got to be 15 to get your learner's permit. We don't allow them to vote. You got to be 18 to do that. You got to be 18 or 19 to drink, depending on which province it is. And you cannot serve overseas in the military below 18 because it's a little, child soldier thing. 12-year-olds can't serve in the military. So the reason society does that is because children are children. And we need to acknowledge that these are people who still should be playing with Legos, maybe playing on their Nintendo Switch, but not making decisions that affect 1,100 jobs, including all the neighbors I just mentioned. So one of the things that was mentioned in most of the affidavits in the injunction was the fact that all the forest fires that we've had this year and in recent years are all, obviously caused by the power stations at Estevan and Coronach, as opposed to the power stations in China, for instance, or the ones in North Dakota. North Dakota has a whole bunch of coal-fired power stations, but clearly those aren't the ones that are causing these forest fires. It's Estevan's. So I've been thinking about this, especially since I'm sitting here by the fire. And I was realizing that, modern forest firefighting really didn't start until after World War II. Let's say 1950. Now, my stuff here isn't going to be perfect. My numbers aren't going to be perfect. My history isn't going to be perfect either. But let's do a thought experiment like Albert Einstein used to say. So prior to that, they didn't have water bombers because they didn't have planes that could handle that sort of thing. Or at least not that could do much. Sure as hell didn't have helicopters. We also didn't have the big heavy equipment that was built and ended up being surplus after World War II. There was some, but not nearly the point of what we had after. So modern forest firefighting started really late 40s, 50s, we could think, because during the 40s we kind of were busy fighting the Nazis as opposed to fighting fires. So fire starts in a bush, which lightning, that sort of thing would often happen. Sometimes from an idiot with their fire, but lightning would be the big cause. So we would go and put out that fire. So I'm going to do a little bit of experiment here. So let's say every year, here's the amount of fire that was supposed to burn that year. Because 100 years ago, we didn't do any firefighting at all. At least not the way we do now. Okay, 150 years, we sure didn't. So let's say that every 50 years you had a fire go through. Maybe it's 70, maybe it's 80. Let's say 50. Okay, so 2% of the fire of the whole forest would burn. So we go and fight it. So here's our 2%. So 1 we're going to put here, and it didn't burn. And 1 we're going to throw in the fire because it burnt. And the next year, we take our 2 pieces. Oh, we fought this one. Put it here. And then this one burnt. So move this here a little bit so you can see that. Where is that? Oh, there we go. All right. Next. This part burnt. This part we thought. Oh, we're not even into the 60s yet. Okay, we're still into the 50s. This part burnt. This part we thought. See my little thing that's getting up going here? So now we keep doing this. Fight one, save one. Or sorry, burn one, save one. Burn one, save one. Oh, look at this. I got a little bit of a stack of kindling here. Let's keep going. So let's go through the 60s. Oh, we got bigger water bombers so we can fight more. And some will burn. By the way, this is getting a little warm here, just so you know. All that, see my little flame going here from the stuff that's burning? And remember, if you make any comments on here, I can respond to you. I can bring them up. Okay? Another one burns. Another one's fought. Well, now, this is just in a few years, we've got all that. So what happens if we do this for 75 years? Okay, well, I'm going to have to move a little quicker here before you guys get bored. 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm getting a little toasty here. 1, 2. We're not even through the 60s yet. My fire's getting bigger. Okay? So now, you get some, as Brad Wall would say, some jack wagon comes along. Where did I put that? There we go. He comes along and he starts a fire. Because, I don't know, maybe he's looking for work. I don't think that one's going to work. Let's try this one. Maybe he's a smoker. Maybe he's just an idiot. And he comes along and he starts your fire. Well, we have this buildup for the last 75 years of fighting forest fires. If we had just let it burn, forest would get cleared out. We wouldn't have this big buildup of stuff. But now, here we go. Let's get this going a little bit better here. Oh, there we go. That's my fire starter. So here's our little arsonist. And this is going to get going here pretty soon. And I'm going to have to shovel it in before I burn my myself or anything else. See, this is how you end up getting big fires. Is that if you fight half the fires over the last 75 years, there's going to be a buildup of material. But there's no mention of this in any of the affidavits that said we should get rid of coal. There is no mention of forest management practices like this. There's no mention of coal from the other places. It's just our coal that's the worst. We have to take responsibility for our greenhouse gas contributions. Now, I have a rock I keep in my vehicle. I actually forgot to grab it here. That I picked up at the lease of the Arizona Lithium, actually. It's just south of Torquay. And it's a little chunk of red granite. How did that granite get there? Well, there's no red granite native to southern Saskatchewan. I would guess that it probably was ground off the Canadian Shield way up north by a glacier, which moved over 100,000 years down south and eventually melted. And that glacier melted, and it left terminal moraines and eskers, which eventually became gravel pits. And those gravel pits were dug up and used for road building. And on this lease road, you ended up with this red chunk of granite in southern Saskatchewan, 3 miles southwest of Torquay. How did that granite get there? Was it my gas guzzling SUV or the 2 coal-fired power plants 6 miles from my house? None of that gets discussed in any of these things either. So I wrote in the last week here, believe it or not, 13,000 words. I basically cut and paste the entire meat of all the affidavits of the people who are trying to fight rejuvenation of coal. And you can go and read through all of it on pipelineonline.ca and see, what exactly they're saying and what they're not saying. They're not saying that we have all this extra material, which is left over from years and years and years of forest fire fighting. They're not saying anything about China's coal, but they are saying that basically we're the devil and we have to stop. Now, I want to get back to something I talked about a little bit earlier about the fact that I'm standing in front of a fire here right now. So I'm 50 years old. And when my parents got married in 1973, they didn't have power. I kid you not. The farmyard that my dad bought, the little shack of a house, did not have power, did not have running water. You pooped in a bucket, and if mom wanted to have light at night, she had to hook up jumper cables to the battery on the car. That's how she lived for the first few months of her marriage. In my lifetime, until we moved to a different farm a few years later, bought a different farm near Hyas. We didn't have running water. I pooped in a bucket for the first 6 years of my life until 1981, when we got a well installed and running water. Our house there had an oil furnace, which was quite expensive, so we had a wood furnace added to it to supplement the heat. So we only burned oil when we had to, but we burned wood otherwise. Now, to do this little thing here, we had some trees that fell over I had to cut down here. I'm not in the greatest health. I had a heart attack 12 years ago. And for me to take the chainsaw, which I'm not good at doing, and to just cut up a little bit of wood, it basically took me an hour of my time to not even generate enough wood to run for one night in wintertime. And I grew up with this stuff. I mean, I'm not good at chainsaws. I'm never good at that. But I did have a wood stove as a kid. So the people who are doing this injunction, as I said, the lawyer who's leading it, now he's a former professional, or he is a professional engineer. He's a mechanical engineer. Turns out he and I actually went to university together. He passed, I failed. This is what happens when you fail. So he's pretty bright on this stuff, and he lives on acreage near Vanscoy, and he's done all the off-grid environmental stuff, whatever. I think he's still connected to the grid, but he's done all the environmental stuff you can imagine. But not everyone can live on an acreage or a farm out of town. So in town, are you going to be chopping wood? In town, are you going to be, how else are you going to keep your place going? Because, they don't want natural gas expanded. So natural gas is out. They don't want coal. So coal is out. And there's a website. It's called the digit 5billion.ca from Saskatchewan Environmental Society. 5billion.ca. Check it out. It's about, oh my God, these natural SMRs are $5 billion each. And yes, that's true. In fact, I've been the one pointing it out before anyone else. They don't want nuclear either, clearly. So if they don't want nuclear, they don't want coal, they don't want natural gas. Oh, and by the way, on a cold winter's night in Saskatchewan, regularly, 88% of our power comes from coal and natural gas, usually 44% each. At least it was until they shut down Unit 5. And if we don't have nuclear, what are we going to do? Well, they say wind and solar. Okay. This morning at 10:15 a.m., Alberta, which has built double the amount of wind they've had since 3 years ago, they now have 5,688 megawatts. They were producing 60. That is 1% output of the nameplate capacity this morning at 10:15. On Tuesday, when I did one of the videos standing in front of the crushing plant at York that's being built right now, right beside my mom's place, the power output of Alberta's entire 1,722 megawatt or turbines fell to 6 megawatts. I got a screenshot of 7, but I saw it go down to 6. That was 0.1%. That's it. Now, when I was standing there in front of the $500 million expansion for the Louis Dreyfus Canola crushing plant, and so that was a doubling of the one they built about 10 or 15 years ago, and then half mile down the road or mile down the road was a JRI one, which also was doubled in recent years, which premiered the next day, did an announcement for canola. Those two plants absolutely use at least 6 megawatts, probably 6 megawatts each, probably maybe 20. So all 1,700 turbines across Alberta couldn't power Yorkton's canola crush plants alone. Never mind the rest of the province, never mind the hospitals and the old folks' homes and the factories and the pump jacks and street lights. Just one industrial corridor in Yorkton could not be powered by the entire wind fleet. Now, if you want to build wind and take the risk, fill your boots, but you can't expect the people of Saskatchewan or Alberta to run their entire society on something that goes to 0.1%. But that is what the people who are fighting this injunction, that's what they want. So I came to the realization, and trying to think about my little fireside chat here, is that you can't reason with these people. If nuclear, which gets rid of the whole CO2 emission, is bad, natural gas is bad, if coal of carbon capture is bad, if it's all bad, they're nihilistic. They don't want anything. That's basically the definition of a death cult. And these people want to shut down the biggest energy decision this province has made in 10 years. 1,100 jobs. That doesn't count the people who work outside of the industry, the people like Access Machining and Estan, who never even put up a sign on their door because they don't need it, because they do so much work for the power plant and for the mines. People like Skylift, who have a fleet of cranes that at any given time, there's probably one out at the mine or at power doing something. People like Southern Bolt, who supply 20% of their business, goes to supply those facilities. Of all the other jobs in the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, everything else, all those things. And getting back to what I was just saying before, I've been really thinking about this. I think one of my lines I'm going to be talking about is, for all the people who are saying that we have to shut down coal, and we have to shut down, natural gas and nuclear as well, I'd like to see their prioritized lists. Which old folks homes do we shut down power to first when it goes to zero at minus 40? Which schools do we shut the power down to second? Which hospitals do we shut power down to? Which factories? Which businesses? Which restaurants? Which farms? Which hog barns? Which chicken barns? Which dairy farms? All of which require power. Which ones do we shut down first when the wind output goes to zero? It's night. There's nothing for solar. We don't have much solar built here anyhow. And we can't have anything else. I want to see their prioritized list. Will they put their grandmothers or mothers, old folks' home on that list? Because that is exactly the decisions that have to be made. This is not a nefarious thing. This is not a thing of where we can just say, well, whatever, it's fine. No, the deadline for coal is 4 years, 4 months, and 8 days. Yes, the government of Saskatchewan painted itself into a corner. Yes, they didn't get enough replacement built. They did work on nuclear. It's going to take forever. Natural gas has doubled in cost to build them now. The price of gas is likely going to double according to AECO futures. So what do we do? In government, you don't just get the opportunity to say, well, whatever, we're going to follow this. Let the people freeze. You have to do something. So the government of Saskatchewan is doing something. They said we're going to rebuild the coal fleet as a bridge to nuclear. Now, I was at a conference in Saskatoon a month ago. Premier Moe was talking about big reactors. Maybe instead of small reactors, we'll build big ones. But they're not cheap. They're not easy, and they're not quick. There's no way in hell we will get a couple AP 1000 units built and on site before 2040. That's a realistic number because that's how long it takes to license and to build these things. And even if the price comes down, even if Westinghouse is successful in building 38 of these, as they say they have on the works, even if they can, economies of scale, bring the price down by half, it's still going to be numbers that are in line with the entire provincial budget. So these are the hard choices you have to make as government. Because if you don't, people literally can freeze to death and die. You don't get to be nary fair. You don't get to be looking for attention saying, oh, well, I was anxious about the environment, so we should shut down 1,100 jobs and 44% of the grid. You don't get to be the person in Manitoba who doesn't even live here saying, well, Saskatchewan should shut down their fleet, but never mind all the mercury we created in our dams in northern Manitoba. No, you have to make real decisions. So that's my diatribe, folks. I see we had about 57 people listening. I really appreciate sharing this, sharing all the stories I've done over the last week. There's going to be more to come. This is one of those things where we cannot just lay down and die. I hate to say this, but up until this point, the unions, everyone just said, well, I guess coal's done, that's it. We now have a fighting chance. Saskatchewan needs to stand up. The workers need to stand up. The businesses need to stand up and say, look, we need to keep the lights on. We're not giving up. We have a second chance at this, and we're going to fight it. Thank you very much.